Hello and welcome, Just a Live family, to giving you something to talk about live TV. I am your host, Melissa Kretschler. I'm an identity coach and spiritual teacher, and I created this show to bring you something to talk about, to give you stuff to talk about every day, Monday to Friday. And today, if you haven't noticed, we are starting at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, for any of you in a different country, that is totally fine, which is why we're doing it at 9 p.m. because my lovely guest co-host is in Sydney, Australia. So if we did it at 2 p.m., it would be, middle of the night. Not a good thing. Today, we're going to be talking about healthy give and take and how we can create healthier, happier relationships that are more balanced and equal. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Karen, to introduce yourself, and I'm going to share this to my social media.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for the privilege to be here and having something to talk about. My name is Karen Austen, and I am currently in Sydney, Australia, which is a beautiful part of the world. And I have a background in recovering my vitality and vibrancy from complex PTSD, and pretty much absolute burnout, rock bottom, losing everything, money, health, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, financial. I lost it all. So it's wonderful to be here, Melissa, as an identity coach, because I know that you know what happens when you lose everything. And we have our identities attached inside of who we are in the world as a partner, work colleague, our job, whatever it is. So yes, building myself back, well, actually uncovering who I really am, and then having my identity completely connected to myself as a creative principle, and then interacting in the world from that perspective.
Absolutely. And I know we don't promote on the show, so please don't take this as a promotion to anybody who is watching. I absolutely, my catchphrase. So if anybody is a coach or anybody is, seen coaches, we all have these elevator pitch or catchphrases that we vocalize to explain what we do. Mine is actually, I empower my clients to take out their trash, reclaim their identity, and take charge of their life. So when you said, reconnect to your identity, it's so true. We get so lost and so, what's the word I'm looking for? So disconnected to who we are when we have the roles and the titles. When you become, a partner, you become that person's partner. When you become a parent, you become that person's parent. When you start a career or become an entrepreneur, you're that role on top of everything. And it's crazy how much we have to go through, or how much we do go through on a daily. So yes. This episode is definitely one I'm passionate about. And I know you're passionate about it, because we wouldn't be doing it if we weren't. So what do you think the first thing that people need to understand about the give and take, and what this episode itself is going to be about?
So if we looked from a global perspective and then down into our individual perspective, we can see that there are overgivers in the world and overtakers. And then when we look at, that shows up there and there, and then we come back to ourselves and we just really get honest with ourselves and say, where do we overgive? And where do we overtake? And that can be, it can be confronting, because those behaviors were created from a very early age. It's that first moment, like we're going along in our life, we're a little baby, and there's that first moment that we realize that we can do things to stop getting love, and we can change the dynamic, and it's confronting. And even though we may not have language, we do still communicate energetically, and we realize, oh my God, I have to do certain things or not do certain things inside of this family environment. And our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, it knows on some level that we have to behave a certain way, because if we get rejected, we'll be kicked out of the tribe, and that'll mean certain death. And so in that moment of that split, we take on this different way of being and different way of doing, and we do disconnect from who we really are.
Well, it's like people pleasing, right? I know a lot of men and women that I've come into contact with who their entire lives and their entire identity in that moment is based on what everybody else wants and what everybody else needs. And their life is so overwhelmed by people pleasing that they don't know who they are outside of having to do or wanting to do. And that's the thing with people pleasing and the give and take, is you want to do it because for somebody like my husband, so my husband is downstairs, he's probably going to laugh that I'm talking about him yet again. My husband likes, we've talked about the 5 love languages in another episode, and my husband is gifts of service, right? So he likes doing things for people. It makes him feel good doing things for people. Mine is touch, right? I'm a touch. I like to touch and, hugs and kisses and snuggling and all that. But you get to a point where even your love language is pushing you to do what that love language is, just so you feel good about yourself. I find that one of the things to note is there are so many people who are not happy with who they are or don't know who they are, or maybe they're not happy with their life. And again, that's not knowing who you are. But if you're unhappy and you turn around, you're going to project and try to do whatever it is that's going to make you happy, whether that's people pleasing, whether that's give until you have nothing left to give because you're not taking anything.
And that's it exactly, Melissa. We all have certain ways of being, which is great. And if we take apart giving and receiving, we can, inside of agreement, we can give with integrity and we can receive with integrity. Mm-hmm. And then if we're outside of agreement, there's the muddy waters, and then there's the extreme of war and rape and groping or entitlement or slavery outside of, that giving and receiving. And most of us sit inside either of agreement or in the muddy waters. And because we have different patterns of behavior, we know we've stepped into our shadow around it if there's boredom, resentment, or frustration. Like, our emotions are so powerful in letting us know if we are in alignment with who and what we really are, or if we're out of alignment with our desires. And it's like, I am so much in service like your husband, and miracles happen. Like, miracles happen when you come completely empty to be of service. It's like the universe sort of wraps in and around in itself, and these miracles happen. And if I turn up in service and I'm already a little burnt out or a little bit, if I'm turning up in service in order to, I want to get something, well, then I'm just going to get hammered. I'm going to get burnt out. I'm going to be annoyed because they didn't want my service. Why didn't they feel grateful that I came and did this? And I think this is where we get caught up sometimes, is when we're doing what feels natural. However, on one level, it's to get something. And it comes down to our capacity to be connected to our direct root of pleasure, which means pleasure on all the senses. I know it's been co-opted a little bit by sex and intimacy, but if we look at pleasure from the realm of wonder and awe and joy and happiness, like pleasure that feeds all of the senses.
Walking around in nature, right?
Exactly.
The calming, the wonder of being out in that space. Absolutely. I wanted to touch on something you had said, and I can't remember what it is now. Of course. See, this is 9 o'clock my time, right? It's evening time my time.
Alignment with our emotions or giving to get.
Yeah, intention, that's what it is. That's it. Yeah, when you were talking about the integrity behind it, and when you're not happy with yourself and you're giving to get, that intention is out of line. That intention will make sure that whoever you're doing something for, or whatever you're doing something for, you're going to get that same intention back. You're not going to get what you want out of it. You're not going to get what you need out of it. You're going to get what you're actually putting into it.
Yeah.
And I don't think, go ahead.
And it's like, say I wanted to make someone a cup of tea. And when we look at our giving, we have to look at who it's for, because then we actually access our direct route of pleasure or our indirect route of pleasure. And it can be as simple as making a cup of tea. So if I see my partner and he's a bit stressed and I go and make him a cup of tea because he's got a long night ahead of him, I'm making him a cup of tea. If I'm only connected to my indirect route of pleasure, his response, whether he likes it or not, will determine how I feel. But if I'm completely connected to my direct route of pleasure, his response to the cup of tea makes no difference at all. Mm-hmm. And it's like, in the realm of overgiving, where we go to burnout or people pleasing or martyrdom, it's where we go overboard on these things where we have only the indirect route of pleasure available to us. So we'll give and give and give and give and give for the response from the other person. And yet, if I can just give completely, because I know that that's so integrity of where I am and what I have to offer, because and whether or not, and it's like it's just there. It's this natural impulse, this natural following through of the feeling and alignment in my body. Yeah. And so, and that's how I ended up burnt out and like at rock bottom. Is I thought my worth. Because we can interchange pleasure from esteem, worth, value, appreciation, anything. My worth came out of what I could do for another. Yeah. And so I was so disconnected from my own being that it was always taking care of another, taking care of another, taking care of another. And there was nothing left, literally. Nothing left.
For sure. And for anybody watching, this isn't just for women. This is for men as well, right? You've got women who are wife, mother, caregiver, teacher. Like we have so many roles wrapped up into one that it does get overwhelming, and it is a lot of burnout because kids aren't always going to show their appreciation, right? So like you said, if you're in it for the response, their response to you helping them isn't going to give you what you're looking for, right? If your partner's had a bad day and you just want to make them feel better, and you know what, I like doing something nice. You're not having a great day. Here's a cup of tea. Whatever, right? And even if it doesn't change their mood, even if you don't get that response, you still know that you've done something that you want to do. Now, a caveat to all of this is when you are doing something for somebody else and doing that gift of service and giving with the intention of just giving, I just totally lost where I was going with that.
Well, then everyone's energized, like you're energized. If you give just from the intention of giving and knowing that the other person's response has no impact on you, it's like you are whole and complete in and of yourself, which we all are and we have forgotten. And part of the reason that we play with this indirect route of pleasure is because we've forgotten that we are whole, complete, and perfect. And we've forgotten that love is this inside generated, omnipresent feeling. Like if we're doing it to get love, we have forgotten that we already are it. And so,
Yeah.
of course, we're going to be disappointed completely.
Yeah.
And inside of, relationship, in the give and take of a relationship, when we come down to it, the communication is so important and so powerful. And it really comes down to three things. It comes down to making requests, making offers, and making invitations. And when we can master those three things, everything, both with the relationship we have with ourselves and others in our, in our immediate circle, family, and then friends, and then community, and then country, and then globally, if we come down to those integrous things of requests, invitations, and offers, it's a completely different life we have, and what we can then generate. And
can you elaborate a little bit more on those three?
So making requests, offers, and invitations means that we have a foundation of knowing what's inside of our domain. And people may use the word boundary in relation to this. However, I'm going to use the word domain because a boundary can change. What's inside of our domain never changes. We always have a right to it, and we always have a responsibility for it. However, we have not been taught this in a way that's been really functional in a family. So what we have a right to and a responsibility for inside of our domain is our wants, our desires, our pleasures, our feelings, our thoughts, our fears, our faith, everything sort of inside this body. And so if I look at everything that's inside of my domain and I have my body as the boundary, it never changes. I always have a right to it, and I always have a responsibility for it. The thing that might change inside of that is my limits. And so people might call that a boundary. So, but still, it's all inside of this body. So I might feel like having a hug from someone someday, and the next day I don't. So I've just changed my limit of what I'm willing to experience in that day. And I always have responsibility for my wants. But Melissa, I'm sure you know, if you ask any person in the street, they rarely know what they want. Most people know exactly what they don't want. And that's because of this indirect pleasure. Those moments when we were really young and we were taught that the action coming towards us was more important than our voice. And so we've always looked outside of ourselves for what we wanted, because inside of looking outside of ourselves, we got approval from the tribe, we got acceptance, and those survival needs as a baby were met. Yeah. So we needed to be clothed, we needed to be washed, we needed to be bathed, we needed to be fed. And inside of those survival needs, we were touched in ways we didn't want. And I'm not talking about abuse at all. I'm talking about, that might have hurt, but we didn't have the communication to be able to say that. And on some level, we knew we needed our nappy change. We knew we needed food. And so the action coming towards us was more important than our voice. So we sort of left our domain. And so our wants are still there. They're still inside of the body. And we have no say in our wants. The only say we have is in whether or not we'll let them be known, whether or not we will allow them to be expressed. And so inside of requests, offers, and invitation, we have to come back to the body and go, what would feel really good right now? And have the courage to ask for it. Mm-hmm. Or if something's happening to us that we don't like, have the courage to say, hey, instead of, because what we've been trained to do is like something's happening to us that we don't like, and we go, why don't I like that? Instead of saying, what would feel really wonderful right now? And saying, hey, can you just stop that for a moment? I just need to check in with myself. Something's feeling a little bit off. And then we go, you know what? I don't want to go to the park right now. I need to go home. No, I don't want a hug right now. I just need to have my own body back. And so requests, offers, and invitations, they're three very simple things. The pathway to them is through the body and through knowing that our wants are inside of the body, and having the courage to go, whoa, okay, I need a moment. What would feel really good right now? Because the whole of society has been trained that the action coming towards us is more important than our voice.
Yeah. And we are definitely taught that. Being taught that what we want isn't as important as what other people want, right? And the people pleasing. So that goes hand in hand with that. Being taught that in order to get something, we have to do something for it. You know, there's so many lessons we learn as children that now are manifesting into our adult selves. And it's like, we don't ask for what we want. We don't have equality. We don't feel confident enough to voice that, right? We don't have the courage to voice, hey, you know, I want this right now. This is what's going to happen. Or, you know, I'm going to make sure that this happens for me. Would you like something as well? Right. So it's healthy give and take for sure.
Absolutely. And courage is the word. Everyone, a lot of people think they need confidence. Confidence only happens after courage. And courage, the root word comes from the heart. And so then if we go to the heart of who we are, what are my wants? And knowing that I have a right to them and a responsibility for them. And Melissa, you were just speaking, and what you reminded me of is something you said a little while ago around, you know, male and female. It's like if we look at how little girls were praised, they were praised for their attributes. And how little boys were praised, they were praised for their skill. And so for a little girl, you can't get better at an attribute. You just can't. You can't get better at it. But people tie themselves up in knots to get better at being good enough. And when you look at little boys, you can get better at a skill, but part of praising little boys and that whole superhero thing, you have these men who will just become superheroes and their body breaks apart because they think their esteem comes from always having to do. And so
being the provider.
Exactly.
Being
and so,
masculine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And not fully being loved for who and what they are, no matter what they do. And just
one of the most traumatizing things I think, or that I've seen for a lot of men, is being told to man up, that emotions are for girls, that, you know, they have to be strong and they're not allowed to cry and they're not allowed to feel sad. And men at very young ages are taught to be robotic, are taught to close themselves off from any emotional or, you know, any emotional wants or needs. They're closed off from them. And then that again manifests when they're older to, you know, macho men and being, and not macho men isn't, you know, working out, but men who hide themselves behind this persona of I'm untouchable. I have no emotion. You know, it's quite sad.
Yes. And then women complain that he's unavailable. And it's like, until we can take full responsibility for what's inside of our own domain, wants, desires, pleasures, fears, thoughts, feelings. And this is where we get ourselves a little bit tripped up. We want to step into someone else's domain. And we do it by saying to them something like, "Oh, are you sure you don't want a hug?" But if I come back to my domain, I go, "Oh, I want to put my hands on that person." And I'm trying to do it by saying, "Here, let me give you a hug." And it's like, I want to feel better over here by stepping into another person's domain and pretending that they want it. And then we try and make someone feel better. And we get annoyed if we can't. Like, that person is completely responsible for their feelings and thoughts. And the only integrous thing I can do when I see somebody who's upset is, would you just like to be heard, or would you like some support in resolving that? Rather than
what would you like?
Exactly. What would you like?
Asking that question. Yeah.
Exactly.
I did an interview today. So for anybody watching, I do pre-screening interviews for all of my co-hosts and all of my guests. And I was doing one today, and we're actually doing an episode on April 1st. And it's doing too much for other people, not a give and take, but in a sense of, what are you doing? And are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for them? And that's exactly what that is, right? If you're right, the hug, right? Do you need a hug? Well, are you sure you need a hug? Because, I'd be like, I want a hug.
Yeah.
See, for me, I'd be like, you know what? I'd really like a hug right now. Right?
Exactly. It's like knowing, okay, yes, exactly. I want a hug right now. And then looking at my partner and I'm saying, would you give me a hug right now?
Mm-hmm.
Would you give me a hug right now? And being okay either way. So you've taken care, you've taken responsibility for your desire, your want, and that person has taken responsibility for their limit.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point of give and take. And for this video, that is literally the point, right? Is you can only control your actions, your wants, your beliefs, your needs. It isn't anybody else's responsibility to make you happy. It isn't anybody else's responsibility to make you feel enough, to make you happy enough, to make you sure that you're fed. It is nobody else's responsibility, whether that goes to being a baby and thinking that everybody else had to do for me. Growing up as a kid, everybody did for me. Mom did for me. Dad did for me. You know what I mean? Like, they solved all my problems. And now it isn't anybody else's responsibility to make sure, like you said, and I love the way that you say that, it's my domain. I have a right to the way I feel, to what I need, to what I want, but I also have a responsibility to make sure that my needs are met, to make sure that my voice is heard, and to make sure that I'm honoring and loving me first and foremost.
Exactly, because love is nobody can give us love. Like, in the sense of, love is this omnipresent self-generated feeling. And if we're expecting it from outside of ourselves, we're always going to be disappointed, because that whole adage of someone can only love you as much as they love themselves. And the other way we can look at that is, I can only feel love to the extent at which I love myself. So if I can't generate it, no matter what anyone does outside of me, I'm still not going to feel it. I have to be able to generate it myself. And it's like, if we look at pleasure as a neurophysiological thing, which means it's an experience, an individual, unique experience that we all have access to. Nobody can give us pleasure. Nobody can really give us love. They can contribute to our experience of it. They just can't give it to us. And so when we look at it, so
No,
it has, yeah.
Go ahead.
So if we look at it, the three components of it, it's stimulus or sensation, awareness or attention, and the meaning or context in which we're doing it or perceiving it.
Yeah.
And so if one of those three parts of the triangle isn't there, it's just not available to us. And if we look at the pleasure pain spectrum, I was speaking with someone the other day and she said what gives her pleasure is singing. And also it can generate pain based on, so when she's experiencing it as pleasure, she can feel it in her body, the vibration, the sound. She can also have the stimulus of being in a choir and hearing the harmonies. And so her attention and her awareness is in the body as well as the harmonies. And the meaning that she gives it is the harmony and the gift that the singing of the choir can give to other people. But she can also experience singing as pain. And it's like she still has the same vibration and sensation in her own body. However, the meaning and context could have changed, or what she has her awareness and attention on has changed. So if she has the meaning context of, oh, I'm in an exam, and this song is going to determine whether or not I go to the conservatorium or not, and places all of her awareness on the meaning or the context, well, then very soon it goes from pleasure to pain. And also if her awareness changes, if someone walked in and all of her awareness goes outside of herself, wondering who this person is, and there's anxiety that overtakes the sensation of singing, again, it's going to go from pleasure to pain.
Yeah.
And then if we look at that, like in an intimate relationship, in a work relationship, in a family relationship, what are we focused on here? Are we spending too much time in the meaning that something has happened? Like if someone did or didn't do something that we didn't like, are we focused on the meaning of it? Where has our attention gone? Has it gone from, is this a gift? Why didn't they like it? Why didn't they like their gift? And I needed something from them. And so it's like, how do we play in these incredible dynamics, especially like if we looked at the drama triangle, the rescuer, the perpetrator, or the victim, we can all very easily hop into any one of those parts of the drama triangle unless we're centered, unless we're fully connected to our own domain. Unless we're fully connected there, knowing exactly what it is I want in this moment, know exactly what my limits are, and that I have the capacity to articulate them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely like that. I think that you mentioned very briefly intimate relationships. If you find pleasure in your partner, and then and I'm talking pleasure as in the sexual variety, if you find pleasure in your partner at one point, and then 6 months later you're no longer finding pleasure in your partner, that isn't your partner, that's you.
Exactly.
Right? That's your reception, that's your perception, that's your emotion you're portraying. You can look at something and be like, okay, well, do I like this? Do I not like this? Is it? Yeah, no, I agree.
That's it exactly, Melissa, because if we break it down, if we break down the giving and the receiving, we have to look at it through the lens of two questions. Who is doing and who is it for? Who is doing and who it's for? Because if we break down receiving, there's active receiving and there's passive receiving. And if we break down giving, there's active giving and there's passive giving. And so there's two dynamics in giving and receiving. And I'll give you the analogy through an apple orchard. So I have apple trees in my backyard, and the apples are the gift. And I'll say, Melissa, I have some apples. Would you like some? And so the gift is the apple. Now, I can gift you these apples in two ways. I can pick them and give them to you. And so I'm taking the action, I'm doing the doing, I'm taking the action, I'm picking the apples, and I'm gifting them to you. So the action goes my way to you, and the gift goes my way to you. But I could also say, Melissa, I've got some apples. You are very welcome to them. You can come into my backyard and pick them yourself. So the apple is still the gift, but I'm not picking them. You are. And so you are taking the action to receive the gift of the apples. And so inside of the apple tree, I can say, okay, Melissa, you can have all the apples. I'm going away. Please take them all. Or I could set a limit and say, Melissa, you can take 10 apples. And if you take them from the left side of the tree, I've said how many apples and where you can take them from. So I've set limits. And so then if we bring that into the bedroom, there's two ways to receive pleasure, and there's two ways to give pleasure. One is active and one is passive. So then if we look at it from the perspective of agreement, inside of agreement, I could say, Melissa, or you could say to your partner, I could say to my partner, you have complete access to my body to do whatever gives you pleasure. Whether I
and that's
find
the
it
passive, right?
Yeah. So I'm passively allowing access to my body. He is taking action to receive pleasure from my body. So I'm allowing access. My gift is my body. He is taking action to receive pleasure from my body. And then the other way would be, he could say, I want you to do this. So he's getting the gift. The gift is going his way, and I'm taking the action. So the action's going his way as well.
Yeah.
So it's active and passive giving and receiving, all inside of agreement. And then all we have to be concerned about is our limits.
Yeah.
So you can do this. You can have access to my hand tonight. Like you can feel my hand. You can have access to my neck tonight, and that's it. That's all. And so it's like negotiating those limits inside of pleasure is not something I can do for you. I can contribute to it. However, it's in the way you want. And it's just fun negotiating that. It's just fun because what happens then, you're in your body, not in your mind. Because most people, I mean, and my own experience at time is we're always thinking, does this work? Is this the way you want it? Is this, and so we're in the mind rather than connected body to body. And I know people out there in our listening audience feel it. They feel when it's deeply connected, whether it's in the, and I know we're speaking in intimate relationships here. However, it's anywhere we feel pleasure. We know that connection is because all of our senses are alive and the mind is just put to the side.
Yeah. No, absolutely. All right. So let's start. I know we've touched on it, and I know we've touched on it, but let's detail it out a little bit. So healthy balance. What do you think a healthy balance is in any relationship? Not just a partnership, but family, friends, coworkers. What's a healthy balance in that give and take?
So a healthy balance is I'm going to put the word balance to one side for a moment, because our body knows balance. It intrinsically knows balance. So I'm going to use the word natural. So if I can naturally make my requests, my offers and invitations, and every single one of them feels good, and if I can naturally receive offers, requests, and invitations, and I can respond to every single one of them with an authentic yes or an authentic no. For me, that is like this microcosm and this little family unit that expands and contracts no matter what is happening, both in the family, professionally, or globally. And so if we have this natural capacity to expand and contract individually and then in our family unit, where every single person in that family unit knows what their desires, wants, needs are, and have the capacity to ask for them and be with the yes or no, no matter what, and still remain grounded and authentic, like authentically in action. Okay, I asked for it. I actually trusted, valued, and honored my own needs, and I asked for it, and it was an authentic yes or no. Okay, so what else must I do to have this need met? Who else must I be to have this need met? And so it's like this organism that lives and breathes based on what's happening in the natural environment in the moment.
Yeah, I love that idea, and I love that concept. I find that society, not as a whole, but in a majority, not a lot of families or family components will have every member being on that ebb and flow, right? And so for a lot of our viewers, and correct me if I'm wrong, please post in the comments, the replay, let me know, is there are going to be people in that cohesive unit that aren't giving, that are taking without giving. And then it's, when I say balance, it's not 50-50. It's never going to be 50-50. There are going to be times where you are doing more of the giving. There are going to be times where you are doing more of the receiving. It depends on situations. It depends on needs. It depends where you are personally and individually. So there are a lot of components to that. But to avoid burnout and to avoid, that overwhelm, it's having those conversations, right? And saying, our family will work better this way. And having those conversations, right? And being able to ask for what you believe would benefit everybody, but having it as a discussion. That's the communication part, right? Is having it as a discussion. This is what we should be doing. What do you feel?
Yeah. Yes. And for me to say an absolute yes to something where my yes could be trusted is I had to learn how to say no. So fundamentally, the people that are overgiving have to learn how to say no, because their yeses that can't be trusted. And it's not that they can't be trusted externally. We lose trust with ourselves. So if I say yes when I mean no, I am moving further and further away from myself.
Yeah.
And so for the people who overgive, learn how to say no, and learn how to say no in, it's like, no, 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 and learn the colors and shades of no. Learn which no's work for you, and bring lightness to no, knowing that it has nothing to do with you. and that you're building trust with yourself.
Yep.
And then inside of the people that are overtaking, it's like practicing saying no to them so that they get used to hearing a no. They're probably very used to saying no, and they're not often used to hearing a no. And so people want to proclaim the benefits of yes, 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 until we can say no and mean it and build that trust muscle with ourselves, knowing I can back myself in any moment by saying, and even in those moments where I've said yes, I can ring up and say, I know I said yes, and I regret I'm now no longer able to do that. And having no as a complete sentence. I don't have to explain or justify or give reasons. At this moment, it's a no. I regret it's no right now. Thank you and no. And just explore all of these wonderful ways to say no. And then, because when we say no to something external, we are saying yes to ourselves. And the more we say yes to ourselves, the more we're getting in contact with our own domain, the more we're building our own trust muscle with ourselves, the more we're connecting to our own wants. And we're not, and here's the thing, people who have been overgivers feel selfish when they say no. They've just been trained that what is selfish is just a little bit out of whack.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit out of whack. Yeah. And the more we can come back to an authentic no, we do have to move through a bit of a feeling of guilt and shame, knowing that that's just the nervous system recalibrating. We're just recalibrating back to our own authentic way of being, which gives so much more to everyone around us anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, I agree and disagree. And I love episodes where I've got a little bit of disagree. I agree and disagree. And I love what you're talking about. I absolutely do. And it's completely valid, but it's very in-depth. And for me, even, right? For me to listen to you speak about the giving and the receiving and feeling it in your body, it's so deep, but so true that it's almost overwhelming in itself, right? Because my mind is going, could I do that? Could I not do that? Like I'm thinking, and anybody watching or anybody catching the replay, let me know if you're thinking the same. Is, if you start saying no, right, and authentically saying no, and like you've said, you don't need to give a reason. You don't need to give an excuse. For me, I'm like, but like I would fight that. Like my psyche is fighting that right now by going, if you agree to something and then say no, like, I mean, for me, I would feel like there needs to be some sort of explanation, right? And don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There are yeses. If I say yes, I'm going to go somewhere. I'm a hermit. I don't like leaving my house very often. And I do feel pressured into saying yes at times. But at the same time, I start to not have anxiety, but I don't want to go. I don't want to go out. I don't want to do that. And I don't want to be that. But then again, I feel bad because I hermit in my house majority of the time. And probably only go out once a week. So it is a struggle at first. I will admit, like it's worth it to get to that point where you are able to say no and you are able to fulfill your own needs, say no when you need to, say yes when you truly want to, without feeling that pressure. It's wonderful. It is a wonderful feeling. It's not going to be easy getting there. But that's a process, right? And
it is a process. And you touched on, I mean, we could have another whole hour on even just what you just said then, Melissa, because it really is. And I'm just going to speak to two things. One is, yes, our word, the yes or no that we make is like magic in the universe. And if we've said yes to something and then we call up and say, I regret I'm no longer able to come, there's an impact. There's absolutely an impact. There's an impact over there with that person, and we have to clean that up. So we would say, but it's not about giving a reason. It's about, Melissa, I know I said yes to being on the television show on the 5th of March, and I regret I have to say no. And the impact is over there, you begin to lose trust in me. You begin to lose trust and faith in our relationship. And the impact here is I lose power. My word now loses power in the universe. It really does. And I'm not committed to have you mistrust me, and I'm not committed to my word losing power. And next time we come to an agreement, I'm really going to look at my schedule and really see whether I'm going to take the time and say, thank you for your request. Can I get back to you? I need to look at my diary to make sure that if I do say yes, I have the capacity.
Yeah.
So yes, there is an impact if you change your mind. There definitely is. And there's always going to be an impact out there with the person I've made the agreement with. The bigger impact is going to be with me.
Yeah.
I lose mistrust. I begin to doubt myself. I doubt all my decisions, anxiety, depression, all of this stuff comes. And yes, the simple act of saying no is enormously confronting to the body and the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And because we've been trained, it's in our DNA that the action coming towards us is more important than our voice. That's why when everyone it says it's all about mindset, it's not. Mindset is everything. Like the personal development world says it's all about mindset. No, mindset is great. But if it hasn't come through the body first, if it has not come through the body first, the mind lies, bless its little heart. The mind lies, the body doesn't. The body will give you real-time info. And inside of that anxiety that arises, we look at that fear and we look at faith. They're both invisible things. Fear and faith is invisible, and we feel both of them in the body.
Yeah. I like that. I'm all about mindset. If you ever hear me talk, it's 99.9% mindset. Well, okay, 99.8% mindset. And the reason is because majority of it is, but there is that percentage that is your energy, right? And that's your soul. That's whatever you want to call it. I call it energy because it's easier, because I believe our bodies are fueled by energy. But the other percentage of that is the physical. And you are absolutely right. The physical, the energetic, the mental, they all work hand in hand, but they don't understand it. Your emotions are controlled by your mind. Your feelings are not, right? If you emotionally react to something or emotionally respond to something, that's a mental reaction, right? But if you are feeling something, feeling pain, it can be mental, but that's only if you train yourself not to feel pain at all. Excuse me, but I'm not even, that's again another topic that could be like another hour. But saying no doesn't have to make you feel like an a-hole. For anybody watching, you don't have to feel bad for saying no. Have that conversation, right? Before you say yes to anything, there was a teacher that I had, and she said, before I do anything, I give myself 24 hours. And in that 24 hours, I can check in with myself. I can check in with what I need to check into. I can do my research, whatever it may be. I give myself 24 hours before I don't, because I'm impulsive, but but that's what she told me. And it's so true for a lot of people, having that check-in time with yourself. If you're spiritual, have check-in time with your guides, have check-in time with your energy or your soul. Like, there are so many levels to you checking in with yourself. So number one, check in with yourself. Make sure that saying yes or no is aligned to you. Number two, communication. The way you say things, your words have power. And the way that you request, or the way that you ask, the way that you give, the way that you take, that means something. So again, with one person's giving more than the other, sometimes that's needed. If you need that to change, say you've been giving for 6 months and you're overwhelmed and you're burnt out, you sit that person down calmly and non-emotionally. I can't stress this enough. Do not have conversations that are based on emotions. They will flatline. Okay. Have a conversation logically, and don't put your expectations, your beliefs, your emotions, or your feelings onto that other person. You take that upon yourself. I'm feeling as though I'm burning out. I have been giving, and I need, or I want, some help. So would you take on this responsibility, or would you take on this chore, or would you take on taking the kids to their lessons? Whatever it may be that you're asking for, just know that you're doing it for you regardless of the outcome, right? And if your partner says no, or your friend says no, then again, like you said, sit back and say, okay, what can I do to make myself feel better? What can I do? Can I schedule out half an hour of my day for me time, for self-love, self-care, for me to recharge my energy and my batteries and fill my own cup? And do for yourself what you're expecting other people to do. Yeah.
Brilliant. And everything is energy. Everything is energy. And we can't think any greater than we can feel. We can't think any greater than we can feel. So if we can reach for the feeling place first, and then reach for the thoughts that go with that feeling place. So reach for the feelings and then reach for the thoughts. And our behaviors come out of our body. They don't come out of our mind. And so when we can get the mind and the body working as one, it's like we have the self-conscious part of us. The unconscious, self-conscious is mind, the unconscious part of us, which is the body, and then the superconscious or the soul, whatever you wish to call it. When they're all aligned, that's when flow happens. That's when life does become this expansion and contraction. So absolutely. And really checking in with yourself, your whole being, not just the mind, but the body as well, because the body, that brain and the heart, they have powerful pieces of wisdom.
So on that note, I wanted to mention, no promotion because I'm not running it right now, but I did a program at the end of the year last year, or mid-year last year, and I called it Chakra Power because I'm a spiritual teacher, as you know, we both have the spirituality aspect to it. But I realized that, and this is why I did that program, is that we have the 7 chakras. We have multiple chakras, but we have the 7 main, right? In our chakras is an epicenter of power. And depending on who we are, and it's different for everybody, but one of our chakras, if not multiple, but usually one main chakra will have an epicenter of power that if we know where it is, if we know how to locate it, we can actually call on that power to give us the confidence, to give us the courage, to give us the love, the understanding, the power to do what we need to do and make the decisions that we need to make and be self-sufficient in our needs. So I was teaching people how to do that, and it was one of my favorite programs to do, because who doesn't want to be able to tap into that power that you uniquely hold, right?
Yeah.
It was quite nice. I absolutely loved it, and I wanted to mention it because it was one of my I created that program. Like, it wasn't something I learned from a different spiritual teacher. It wasn't something that is regularly taught. I created that concept, and that was powerful for me to know that that's something that I did because it's something I use.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all generate and synthesize the gift of what we offer based on our own experiences. And it's like, for me, it's reclaiming the power that is intrinsically ours. And you mentioned before, the emotional response to the trigger, to the thought. It's like the power in that is in the moment. It's like the only real power actually is neutral, and it's that power to choose. Can I choose a different response rather than the patterns that are in the mind?
The reaction.
Yeah, exactly. So the power to choose. And it's like the choosing over the doing. Yeah, I've got this. And everyone does have that capacity to choose.
Yeah. I'm going to say this on here. I'll probably record it later for TikTok, but and I mentioned this yesterday in the video I did yesterday, and I'll mention it repeatedly because it's one of my favorite things to mention. There is a huge difference between a reaction and a response. A reaction is a quick fire emotional response. There is no logic behind it. There is no truth behind it. It is literally just, oh, my mind says that pisses me off, I'm going to react. That is a reaction. A response is when you remove that emotional reaction, or you step back and say, okay, I'm feeling pissed off. I'm going to give myself a minute, do the 15-second breathing technique or whatever it is you need to clear that emotion, and then say, logically, am I mad because of a perceived thought? Or am I truly mad because energetically in my body, I feel that was intentional, right? And then you respond. And there's a huge difference between them.
Yeah, because the body drives the behavior. The nervous system, the fight, flight, freeze part of the autonomic nervous system, is the thing that drives the reaction or the response. And when we're born, we know how to mobilize it. We know how to cry. We know how to ask for our need through distress. But we're never taught how to calm ourselves down. We have to learn that through another, a carer, a parent. If the carer or the parent can't help us calm that down, the neural networks in the baby's brain are pruned and rewired based on the environment. And so it happens in the body. It just happens in the body. And so if we look at, I had the police station attached to the house and the prison cell in the backyard. So there was always a level of vicarious trauma in my environment. So my nervous system inside of my body sort of changed the barometric pressure. It increased to a new normal. And so then what was normal for my whole system was to go into an environment that felt the same. And so I went into the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And my nervous system then kept expanding what was normal because the body just wants this homeostasis. And yet it wasn't until, like, I did an enormous amount of mindset work. However, the level of autonomic dysregulation in the body, the level of the nervous system that was dysregulated, and you can see it in any family that has a lot of fighting, or if there's a lot of anxiety, or if there's a lot of depression, it's a nervous system in the person. The nervous system is a little out of whack, and it's like being able to calm that down. And once there is a nervous system that can flow, the other nervous systems in the family, it just changes the whole dynamic in the family. And so it's like, it is the nervous system that moves us into fighting mode or connection mode or running mode or depression mode. It's the nervous system. And so it's like how to bring it back to its natural rhythm. And then automatically the behaviors and the thoughts change with it.
For anybody catching this, try the 15-second breathing technique. It is absolutely transformational, just how quickly it relaxes your body. It relaxes your emotions. It relaxes. So it is literally inhale for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds. And you can repeat this multiple times, but even from the first try, you will notice a difference in the way your body feels. 15 seconds, like 15 seconds. That's all it takes.
Absolutely. That is the perfect nervous system hack. It really is, because it's the nervous system that controls the breath. So when you come in and bring it to a different pace, you are hacking your nervous system. Absolutely. It changes your heart rate, all of these things. So powerful.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we end? We're over the hour mark, so I think we might as well shut it down. Anything else you'd like to add?
It's just been a pleasure to be on here. And I know we've given people something to talk about, which is the point of this conversation. And I love how there's the flow of who we are together in communication. You can build it in the breath, you can build it in the body, you can build it anywhere you like. So thank you, Melissa.
You're absolutely welcome. Thank you. I love it when people see the value of what I'm trying to do with the show, and what I'm trying to give to the viewers and the people watching is just the ability to create conversations or even witness conversations that are going to change, or not change, but are going to help them create a happier, healthier life for themselves, for their loved ones, for anybody they come into contact with, right? Starting a conversation about, even if this entire video, somebody only takes away that 15-second breathing technique, that's transformation.
Yeah.
Not that I don't want you to take away the rest of it, but if that's the only thing you take away from this video, it's your life can change just by calming your body.
And knowing your limits, like knowing your limits. It's okay to have limits.
And it's okay to ask for help.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you know asking for help is coming from you. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for joining me. I really enjoyed this episode, and I think that we did flashing my bra all over the place. That they can take and start having, happier, healthier lives through conversation. The point of the show. So thank you for everybody for catching this episode, catching the replay, listening to it on the podcast. I am Melissa Kretschler, of course, your host of the show. My guest today was Karen Austen. You can connect with both of us through the description in this episode on the website at www.justalivetv.com, and we can connect. Join the Facebook group. Let's connect. If you have more questions, type them in the comments, send us a message. Let's connect. Now, my inbox is always open. I'm always on the hunt for more co-hosts who want to talk about their passion topics. If you have a passion topic that you want to see featured, but you don't want to talk about it yourself, send me a message. I will do my research to find somebody who can come on in and talk about your topic. And thirdly, we are always open to sponsors. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, sponsor a platform, or sponsor the website, I have packages available for all three to make the show bigger, better, and much broader audience. So lots of love, Just Alive family. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Reach out, because again, inbox is always open. Thank you so much, Karen, for joining me.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Enjoy your evening. Bye.
Thank you.